Homer Hooks was born to Earl and Alma Hooks in Columbia, South Carolina in 1921 and grew up with his brother Sidney in Claremont, Florida, where he graduated from Claremont High School in 1939. His great-grandfather was one of the early settlers and citrus growers in Lake County and drew up the plot plan that founded Claremont. Upon graduation, Homer borrowed $100 from his aunt to attend the University of Florida, where he studied journalism, edited the school newspaper, The Alligator, and was a member of the ROTC, the Blue Key Society, and Phi Beta Kappa. He graduated cum laude in 1943 with a BA in journalism and political science. Afterwards, Homer entered the Army. He was awarded 2 Bronze Stars for Valor, the Oak Leaf Cluster for Merit, and the Purple Heart, making him a member of the 2 oldest organized societies in America, Phi Beta Kappa and the Order of the Purple Heart. 1947 was a big year for Homer. He returned to Florida, got married, and was hired as a reporter.
One of his first jobs out of school was working for the Tampa Tribune, covering citrus and agriculture, which is something he knew about from his days growing up in Claremont. And so it was a kind of a natural segue into that from covering that subject to working for some citrus plants and some organizations.
In 1948, he was offered a job as executive secretary for the Canners League of Florida. In this role, Hooks organized a new trade association of independent citrus processors to allow better representation of their views. From there, he worked for the Lakeland Highlands Canning Company, the Florida Citrus Canners Cooperative in Lake Wales, now known as Florida's Natural, and then to H.P. Hood & Sons as general manager. However, the high point of Hooks' career in the citrus industry was the 8 years he served as general manager of the Florida Citrus Commission. During his first year on the job, the industry experienced a devastating tree-killing freeze in 1957, followed by another in 1962. So Hooks launched a nationwide advertising and public relations program to assure consumers and the trade that Florida citrus was still a safe and wholesome product to buy. He traveled the country and assured them that the industry would uphold rigid controls on the quality of all fruit and processed products shipped and traveled to the major citrus markets to help restore consumer faith in the quality of Florida citrus. In Hooks' words, you had no control over the weather. You had to use marketing to move fruit. In 1959 and 1960, Hooks visited 150 importers in England and continental Europe. These were the first substantial efforts in marketing Florida citrus globally as an entity.
Homer Hooks was certainly a pioneer in bringing Florida citrus to the world, and particularly the European markets. Homer Hooks, his work overseas made Florida citrus available in Germany, in France, in England, and he was one of the pathbreakers really for developing that European market and global market.
I remember when I was 11 years old, he was going to take a marketing trip to Germany, France, and Great Britain to try to sell the product overseas. Fortunately, I was able to go along with him. I just sat there in really pretty much awe that his stand-up performance. I knew him as a dad. I knew him as a father. I knew him as somebody who was always on me about grades or whatever. But here I am watching him professionally, and I remember at the time, and I remember to this day, how impressed I was with the way he handled himself, with the way he was able to sell Florida citrus to people that had never heard of it before.
Hooks also led the battle against synthetic products such as Tang and Awake that imitated orange juice.
The Mercury program, the space program, came about in the early 60s through President Kennedy. And so the John Glenn and Alan Shepard, and they were taking their solo trips. And I remember that in one of those trips, the Tang was on board. And that really upset my father. And he felt like, we need to do a better job of exposing Florida citrus. They don't need to be taking anything artificial up into space. They need the real thing. And I think that's where it came from, OJ, the real thing from Florida.
He initiated numerous innovations to modernize the commission, such as separating the bonds and licensing division from the advertising and merchandising of fruit, separating fresh from processed advertising funds, and using different ad agencies for each. All innovations that laid the foundation for today's commission.
During Homer's time at the commission, all of the federal FDA regulations that define our citrus industry and are still in force today, they were put in during Homer's time. And it wasn't just a simple matter of Homer writing a paragraph and handing it to FDA in those days. In order to adopt what we call a federal standards of identity, it was a 3 and 4 month hearing. It was like a trial. They had testimony, they had court reporters, everyone from California, Texas, Arizona, and Florida piled into Washington, D.C., and every analytical parameter, every definition, every labeling scheme was fought over. And someone like Homer, who was so good at bringing people together and getting people to compromise and getting people to sit down, roll up their sleeves, and come up with a solution, Homer was perfect for that job.
The man in the hour had met with Homer in the Florida Citrus Commission and the Florida citrus industry. If you think that maybe public relations and publicity and promotion is a game, well, Homer Hooks is a master of the game, a real master of the game.
Under Hook's direction, the Sell Florida First theme was launched to increase state sales, urging shippers and processors to identify Florida on fruit and labels. Hooks was also viewed as a respected and effective leader and spokesman for the industry in the legislative arenas.
He opened a lot of doors for us in Tallahassee and certainly in Washington, and that really changed the game for the industry too.
Hooks left the Citrus Commission in 1965 to become the newly formed Florida Phosphate Council's first executive director.
Talking about an industry that was struggling with public opinion and legislative problems, and the fact that they brought Homer on is, to help run their affairs, that's a very strong testament to Homer's skills.
Throughout his life, he took care of his family first. Together, he and his wife, Lois Cowles Harrison, are the parents of 6 children and 6 grandchildren, and were joint recipients of the Florida Arts Recognition Award from the Secretary of State, and the first recipients of the Harrison Hooks Lifetime Achievement Award, designated annually by the Polk Museum of Art, Lakeland. He has contributed his time to a variety of important civic activities.
Homer has always been a political force in Polk County. You don't always know he's working on a project. He's probably behind the scenes, but when you walk into a meeting and you see Homer Hooks sitting there, you know something's going on and Homer's involved.
And he isn't afraid to do anything or solve anything because he has the innate ability to sort things out and come to the point.
His contributions to the citrus industry have also continued, including his support of the citrus program at Florida Southern College.
One of Homer Hooks' many contributions to the Florida citrus industry, which came after his service on the Florida Citrus Commission, of course, was his work with Professor Tom Mack here at Florida Southern. What we have now, of course, is the citrus collection here at Florida Southern College at the Sarah D. McKay Archives.
He is a natural-born leader. He's got a magnetism. He's unapologetic for his views. He's an advocate.
The Citrus Commission was lucky to have him. The industry was lucky to have him. Short time, 8 years, that wasn't long, but he accomplished an awful lot.
So, ladies and gentlemen, for his far-reaching contributions on behalf of the Florida citrus industry, we are proud to honor Homer Hooks as a member of the Florida Citrus Hall of Fame.